and gentlemen, welcome back. Music Theory Mondays. We're doing another jazz analysis. The song is called Alice in Wonderland. And as always, I just want to go through, play the chords, discuss them, tell you what key they're in, modulations, parallel keys, relative this, relative that, what's going on. We're starting off in the key of C major. We're starting on the 2 chord, doing a D minor 7 to a G7, which is a 2-5, which is your signature jazz 2 chord progression, down to a C major 7, which is the 1 chord. We're resolving from the G7, and then we're going to go up to the F major 7, which is the 4 chord. So we have a 2-5, 1-4. It's a very rounded feeling kind of chord progression. You go up, you resolve, and then you're gonna swing back out for that F chord. All right, now we're gonna throw in a B minor 7 flat 5, which does not belong. Well, technically it's the 7 chord in C major, but we're gonna be looking at this as the 2 chord in A minor, which is the relative minor of C major. So the 2 chord, B minor 7 flat 5, up to an E7, which is the 5 chord in the key of A minor, and then we're going to resolve to A minor 7. So this is the perfect example in the jazz world of starting off in, say, the key of C major, doing a 3 or 4 chord progression, and then instantaneously modulating to the relative minor, A minor, okay? So again, we're just going to go through this. We got the 2 chord, D minor 7, 5, G7, C major 7 is the 1, up to the 4 and F major 7. Then we're going to modulate to the key of A minor via the 2 chord, which is B minor 7 flat 5. E7 is the 5 of A minor, and then finally resolving to A minor. So classic jazz moves. The next chord is an E flat 7, which technically doesn't belong to either C major or C minor. I'm sorry, C major or A minor. This E flat 7 is a dominant chord, and it's not going to resolve to a tonic chord in either C major or A minor. What we're going to consider this is a tritone substitution. It is exactly a tritone away from the A chord that was just played, and it's exactly a half step away from the chord that follows it, which is the D minor 7. So we're going to go from the A minor 7 to the E flat 7 to the D minor 7. And the reason that works is because that E flat, first of all, it's a dominant chord, so it's screaming for resolution, but it's resolving down just a half step, right? And what does the tritone substitution do? It resolves downward by a half step. So, leading us onto that D minor 7, which is the 2 chord in C, followed by the G7, which is the 5 chord. And then we're going to do an E minor 7 to an A minor 7. And you can feel that move up, right? You have that D minor 7, you got a 2 to 5. Okay. Are we going to resolve from that G7? We're not going to resolve. All right, so we're doing the D minor 7, 2 chord in C major, G7, 5 chord. Then we're going to move up to E minor 7, which is the 3 chord in C, to the A minor 7, which is the 6 chord. So we have 2, 5, 3, 6, which honestly I don't see too often. I don't specifically do jazz all the time, so forgive me if you disagree with me, but I'm dealing in classical, pop, rock, metal, and jazz. So for the jazz stuff that I've done so far on the channel, I haven't really seen that too much, but 2, 5, 3, 6, bringing us back to that D minor 7 again as the 2 chord, up to the G7 yet again as the 5, and then we're going to do the E minor 7 as the 3, and then what we're going to do is throw in a 5 chord. Instead of the A minor 7, we're going to do an A7, which would be the dominant chord in the key of D and or D minor, But we're not going to resolve to D minor or D major just yet. We're actually going to make that A7 and A minor 7 yet again, and then we're going to throw in a D sus, or a D7 sus 4. Now at that point the song repeats back to the beginning. So the A7 is creating tension by making that chord major, having it being a dominant chord. It's resolving through parallel motion to the A minor 7, and parallel meaning that both chords have the same tonic note, so they're both A's. And then the A minor 7 that comes after is simply like the 2 chord in the key of G, because it's followed by a D7. Even though the D7 is a sus 4, it still has that dominant 7, still a dominant chord. So that implies resolution back to like maybe a G chord, right? Or a G minor chord. We're not doing that. We're repeating at that point, and we're going right back into the beginning on the D minor 7. So we have an A7 dominant chord into an A minor 7, parallel movement, tonic note being the same, and then we have a D7 right into a D minor 7, parallel movement, tonic chord being the same. From there, we're going to jump into the second ending, which comes in after a G7 as the 5. It resolves to C major 7, and then we're going to go to A7. That A7 is a secondary dominant chord. It would normally resolve to D. In this case, it's going to resolve to a D7, which would be known as the 5 of 5, because if we're not resolving to a major chord without the dominant note, without that flat 7, we're just resolving a secondary to a secondary. And because the dominant chord is a 5 chord, the A7 is the 5 of 5, because D7 is also the 5. So we're going 5 of 5, and then the D7 is resolving to a G7, which is also a 5. So we have a 5 of 5 of 5. And then that G7 is going to resolve to the 3 chord in C, which is E minor 7. And then we have the A7, A minor 7, which is the 6 down to the D minor 7, and then the G7. All right, I think from there, we're actually just going to be right back to the key of C as the resolution. What's cool about that little passage, though, after you get past the 5 of 5 of 5, is that instead of doing the D minor 7, G7, E minor 7, A minor 7 in that order, they switch it up, and they did the E minor to A minor first, and then the D minor to G7 to the 1 chord C. Whew, it's a lot to say. I hope you guys are following along. If not, feel free to slow down the speed of the video in the settings. You can actually do that if you're not aware. Stop, repeat, download, all that stuff. From there, we're going to be going into the F major 7, which is the 4. So we're back to the 2, 5, 1, 4 that we did at the beginning. So we're doing that F sharp minor 7, which is the 2 chord in the key of E minor, which we're actually going to be modulating to temporarily. Here we got the B7 that comes right after. So it's 2 to 5 in E minor, and then we have the E minor 7 as the resolution. Now, why did we go to the key of E minor? In the beginning, we started off in C, and we modulated temporarily to the key of A minor, which they're relative, the same notes. But why the modulation to E minor? Well, we are faced with what's known as closely related keys, right? So closely related keys would be any 2 scales, major scales, or minor scales that happen to have the most notes in common. So C major has no sharps or flats, E minor has 1 sharp. They're closely related. So that F sharp 7, F sharp minor 7 as the 2 to the B7 as the 5 to the 1 E minor 7 is a 2, 5, 1. All right, so after the 2, 5, 1 in E minor, we're throwing in an A7, which is going to resolve to D minor, and it's actually going to do that several times back and forth. So we have 1, 5 in D minor, and then right before we swing back into the key of C, we're going to go D minor 7 to A flat 7 to G. And I want to consider that A flat 7, which is a dominant chord, I want to consider it another tritone sub because it's resolving to another dominant chord that's just a half step below. So that A flat is right below your G. So playing that makes it very smooth transition. And then of course your G7 is your 5. Back to the D minor 7 is the 2, G7 is the 5, and then we're finally right back to C major. And it does a little bit more of everything we've already done. I'm not going to go through it, but that is basically it. So I'd like to thank you all for watching as always. I hope you're well. Take care.